And Matt, why aren't we doing today's show in alphabetical order and with a live studio audience?
But, listen, that's, no.
We just gave the people what they didn't ask for.
There was the applause there was so resounding that somebody's mic pack fell out. It was great. My last name starts with a U, and therefore I am against anything alphabetical.
And you have been since kindergarten, right? Some of the automatic bids today's show are Tiger Woods, LeBron James, and Odell Beckham. Those are not in alphabetical order. But before we get to them, we, of course, start with March Madness, and we welcome in our college basketball analyst, former head coach at Appalachian State, Jason Capel, who was filling out a bracket before the show even started. Did you get through a whole thing?
I did. I got all the way to the Final Four, and I stopped there. Don't want to take it too far on the first day.
All right, so when you're filling out this bracket, of course, you see which teams are in and which teams are not in. Yes. There was a lot of sort of controversy about the committee selections this year. Which team that made it do you think was least deserving?
I have to look at two teams if I can. Syracuse. Didn't think they had a lot of quality wins when you talk about quadrant 1, quadrant 2. They got a quadrant 2 win to end the regular season against Clemson. Didn't think they had a great showing here in Brooklyn at the ACC tournament. Won one game, but did not perform well against North Carolina. And Oklahoma. Okay, Trae Young has been a great story all year. He's fun. The premature comparisons to Steph Curry. Good player, but they've been figured out. They lost 6 of their last 8 games. I thought those two teams came limping into the NCAA tournament, and other teams were more deserving.
Yeah, as an NBA fan, I do want to see just a little bit more of Trae Young.
Everybody does.
What we might do is, I understand that. What about the other side of the coin? What are some of the biggest snubs that you saw on the field?
I think Middle Tennessee State out of Conference USA. Now, we know Conference USA is a one-bid league. Middle Tennessee was ranked in the top 25 over the last 3 weeks. Very good team. They lost in the semifinals of their conference tournament. They're not in. Thought they deserved to be in. And Notre Dame's a team, if they have Bonzie Colson healthy all season, if Matt Farrell doesn't miss 5 games with a concussion as well, they were down 3 starters for much of the year, still finished in the middle to top of the half of the ACC, got everyone back, had a great showing at the ACC tournament. At full strength, this Notre Dame team's a team that could make the Elite 8. I thought they would be able to get in on the strength of what they did without those key players and what they could do in the tournament with now playing a full slate and a full squad.
Some other teams I heard talked about as snubs. You got Louisville, USC, Oklahoma State. Yeah. Coincidentally or not, they happen to be a part of that NCAA probe with the FBI. Do you think that factors into why they didn't make the tournament?
It shouldn't, but could it have? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Louisville had enough quality wins to be in the field. Now, when you look at Oklahoma State and what Mike Boynton did as a first-year coach, they swept Oklahoma. They beat Oklahoma every time they played. They had a very good season. USC was up and down throughout the year. You hope that doesn't play a factor in it, but people don't want to talk about these investigations as the season goes on now into the most important time of the year where all eyes and ears are on this tournament. And if you put yourself on the bubble with those factors,
all conspiracy theory.
Human nature takes course at some point, but I would like to think those weren't factors. They just didn't meet the resume to get in.
Now, to me, the biggest snub in a way was Virginia because they play in the ACC, got the most teams in. They dominated that conference. They didn't allow a team to score more than 70 points all season. Yet they're thrown in a bracket where you got DeAndre Ayton in Arizona. You got a peaking Kentucky team. You know, that region just seems really strong. Did they get punished for being the #1 overall seed? I mean, Cincinnati, Tennessee.
Well, I think you can say that, and I think Arizona was underseeded. This is an Arizona team that could very well be the best team in the country. They have arguably the best player in the country, DeAndre Ayton. He's what we call a unicorn now, a 7-footer that can run, physically dominant, can make 3-point shots. Their point guard is healthy. They're playing with a chip on their shoulder because of some of the things they have going on off the floor. They're a dangerous team. And that's who the overall #1 seed could possibly play in the second round. That's tough. So it is a tough draw, but what we've seen from Virginia, dominated the ACC, had that clinched 2 weeks in advance, came here to Brooklyn, dominated the ACC tournament. I think Virginia will play anybody, anywhere, on any given time. Their defense travels, and they're going to be a tough out throughout this bracket.
Was that the toughest draw for a 1 seed?
I think so. I mean, I think when you're talking about a second-round game against a team that was preseason #1 in the country, talent across the board. They're angry. They're playing great basketball. They dominated the Pac-12. Arizona's a team that could very easily get to San Antonio and cut down the nets as well.
Also, Arizona, part of that FBI probe, only getting the 4 seed.
Right.
Listen, I got my tinfoil hat in the other room.
You got $100,000 on
it? Jason, what high seed do you think has the easiest path to the Final Four?
I don't think any of the paths are easy, first of all, because it's the most magical time of year, right? Upsets happen. But I think you have to look at Villanova. I think Villanova is a veteran team. They've been there. They have great guard play. When you talk about Player of the Year in the Big East, Jalen Brunson. Mikal Bridges is a guy, he's that Swiss Army knife that everyone talks about now. He's played himself into a lottery pick. When you look down at their bracket, I'm picking them to face West Virginia, which are contrasting styles. Just not sure West Virginia can score enough to knock off Nova. And then facing Purdue, who has great size. They have good guard play as well. But Jay Wright, veteran backcourt, they've been there, just winning a national championship 2 years ago. I'm picking Nova to make it all the way to the Final Four.
Oh, you know what? That goes right into the next question. Over the next 3 to 4 days, and maybe even into next week, every single conversation that we're going to have in our offices, on camera, off camera, who's in your Final Four?
My Final Four, like you said, I just filled it out just now. It was tough picking the Virginia against Arizona game. But Virginia's so tough. They don't bend. They'll bend, they don't break. They're scoring the basketball at a high clip now. Devin Hall, Kyle Guy making shots from the perimeter. You can't penetrate that defense. Playing in the ACC against a guy like Marvin Bagley III, I think they will be prepared for DeAndre Ayton and the front line of Arizona. I have UVA. I have surprise pick to some, Gonzaga coming out of the West. I don't think people know how good this Gonzaga team is. When you talk about 6 players in double figures, Josh Perkins, Jeremy Williams, a nice inside-out factor there. I'm picking them to topple North Carolina in that Elite 8 game. Michigan State. Tom Izzo. It's his time of year, right? It's March, right?
It's a tourney team.
And I don't think you bet against Tom Izzo, and I think they're a team that's played better as the season's gone on. They fill all the spots, they defend, they rebound, and they have a superstar in Bridges that can win games this time of year. And obviously, I have Villanova.
Now,
UVA, Nova, Gonzaga, Michigan State.
You talked about it being Michigan State's time of year. It's also the time of year for bracket guy.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who hasn't talked about college basketball all year, and then all of a sudden, he's an expert.
I'm sitting right here.
Yeah. So this is the guy who's watching us right now and wants those sleeper picks so he can take your picks and make them his own. Which sleeper teams do you have? Why don't you give us one per region?
Okay. I'm looking right at, we talked about Kentucky being a hot team right now, and they are, but I think they have a tough matchup against Davidson. Davidson, Bob McKillop, one of the best basketball minds, basketball coaches in all of the country. He has a player inside, Peyton Aldridge, inside out, can shoot it from distance. Really, really good player. And a freshman that the reason he chose Davidson was because he wanted to be like Steph Curry. Kellen Grady, this kid can flat out score it, 6'4", inside out. I think they pose a threat for the Wildcats. Marshall. I like this Marshall team.
Dan D'Antoni's got him playing up and down.
Oh, they let it fly. They get up and down the floor. For much of this season, they had the highest scoring duo in all of college basketball. John Elmore, he's had 2 triple-doubles in the season. In my opinion, should have been the player of the year in Conference USA. C.J. Burks, they're guards that can score. That's what you need this time of year. They have Penova, a 7-footer inside. They're skilled. I'm picking them to knock off Greg Marshall and Wichita State. I think they're a sleeper.
A historical sleeper themselves.
Absolutely. NC State, I think that's a team. Style of play this time of year is a factor, and the fact that they love to pressure the basketball. They come at you in waves. They have small guards, many times 3-point guards on the floor, and guard play is so vital. I think NC State's a team, because of their style, pressuring the basketball. Al Freeman can make shots. Yurt Seven is going to be a pro 7-footer. I think they're a team. And a team I personally love, the Houston Cougars. The job that Kelvin Sampson's done, when you look at inside out, Corey Davis is a productive guard. Devin Davis, who was out much of the year last year, and that's the biggest reason Houston didn't make the field last season. And Rob Gray is just a cooker. This kid can score at all 3 levels, and that's what you need this time of year. The Houston Cougars, Rob Gray, I think could bust a lot of these brackets because they're a talented team, they're tough, they defend, and they have a guy that can go get you 40 if he needs to pull his team through the winner's circle.
You mentioned how much you liked Marshall and Dan D'Antoni,
yes.
What they can do in the tourney. What about other first-round upsets?
I think it's a few. I'm picking Davidson over Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I just think Bob McKillop is such a good coach. If the game is close, if the Wildcats can keep that game close, they have a guy in Peyton Aldridge that can make shots. They have a freshman that doesn't know he's supposed to be afraid of this moment, and he went to Davidson to get a moment like this, like Steph Curry. So I'm picking Davidson. Marshall over Wichita State's a game that I think, because of style of play again, and I don't think Wichita State has played their best basketball of late, and Marshall has. And they have good guard play, a big guy inside to block shots. If they play a little bit of defense, Marshall, we know they can score enough. And John Elmore is a guy that can make shots from 30 feet, knock down 7 3-pointers in the conference tournament championship. I like Marshall over Wichita State. And New Mexico State has been a popular pick as well, and rightfully so, over Clemson. All they've done all season is win. They played good teams, Illinois, Davidson, Miami. They've knocked off those teams. Zach Lofton was a guard at Texas Southern last year and led them to the NCAA tournament. Well, now he's at New Mexico State leading the charge there. Jamara Moon inside, double-double guy. I think these are dangerous teams that could blow up everyone's bracket because we don't know a lot about some of these players.
Sure.
They have great guard play. They're older. They're a team that's been together. I think we could easily see a few upsets here in this first round.
What about some players to watch? You know, Ayton might be the #1 pick in the draft, so that's an obvious one. Are there a few other players that you're keeping your eye on for making noise either at the NBA level or just to bust some brackets?
All right. Well, if you're talking about NBA level, I think we have to go down to Alabama and what Coach Avery Johnson has at his point guard and Colin Sexton. Now, this is a guy I think NBA people know about, but he's not your household college name yet. And I think we're going to get a lot of him in the tournament. He's a dynamic guard. He put a show on in the SEC tournament, just came up a bit short. I think he's a guy that people will know his name now that we're in March. John Elmore, talked about him at Marshall. Another guard, 2 triple-doubles on the season. He's fun. If you like Trae Young shooting from 30 feet, he's bigger. He shoots it from 30 feet, but he also led the league in assists and also rebounds the basketball. And Houston's Rob Gray. I've known Rob Gray since he was a sophomore in high school. He could score on anybody then, and it hasn't changed now. I think he's a guy for the Houston Cougars that can get in the tournament. He had 33 points against Wichita State in the semifinals. He's not afraid. He's tough. He's a guy that can take and make the big shots, again, that can upset some teams and continue to move on throughout the NCAA tournament.
There you have it, the analysis from Jason Capel. He'll be with us throughout the NCAA tournament. Perhaps another player you could watch is
more like Jason Capable.
For sure. He won't be culpable for anything that took place. Mo Bamba is one of the most highly touted freshmen. You could watch him in the country, and Texas, as they have a date with Nevada in the first round of the NCAA tournament. But Bamba was also part of one of the most celebrated high school teams in recent memory, which was profiled in a new documentary, Westtown, on SITV. Here's a clip, and for the rest and more original shows, docs, and your favorite sports movies, subscribe to SITV on Amazon channels.
I'm almost 50 years old, and this is without question the most talented starting five I've ever seen in high school basketball.
Deep pass to Randolph with 3. He'll drive and throw it down to beat the buzzer.
We have 2 guaranteed pros.
Cam Reddish.
Cam Reddish is the most complete player I've ever seen in high school basketball.
A dish over to Reddish. Cam lobs it up to Forrester, who throws it down for a flush. Number 11, Mohamed Bamba. Randolph down the lane, lobs to Bamba, who flushed it home. Oh my goodness, he put Michael Marsh on a poster. ESPN Corvia Cardi here.
But if there were a genetic Powerball, Mohamed Bamba hit the lottery.
Randolph on the left wing, feeds inside to Bamba. Mo backs in, throws it up there off glass with it. Count it, put it on the line.
He could be the first ever one and done from Harper.
I know that you're so much more than just a basketball player.
What's wrong with just being a basketball player?
Looking inside for Bamba. He finds him. Mo throws it down with authority on the right block.
Mo's got an impossible task. He's got to be able to determine as 18-year-olds who's really on his side.
This is when being a coach really sucks, and especially if you are the coach of your son.
We have to have confidence in you that you're going to go in there and make shots, not pretend to make shots.
Dad says a lot of the same things that Coach says.
You have to miss practice because of academics. You have to miss practice because of academics. And that's what you bring?
And tonight marks the high school hoops matchup of the year. Mo Bamba taking on DeAndre Ayton.
We want to go undefeated. We want to win the league. We want to win the state. Any questions? So I'd like to say that as a coach, I'm really about process, and the end goal isn't that important. But I'd also be lying to tell you if I didn't think there was a ton of pressure on us to repeat as state champions.
Here come the Moose in transition. Randolph left wing. What a crossover to the rim. He throws it up and put him on the line.
The bumpy path that you guys have from boys to men, I want to be a part of that path.
Tiger Woods is back, in the headlines at least, following a second-place finish at the Valspar Championship. One shot behind the winner, Paul Casey. It was Woods' first top-5 finish in nearly 5 years. Now, obviously, he brings tons of extra attention to golf when he's in the running, but how big a deal was this overall?
I don't know, like, how big of a deal is it to be able to dream again? You know, like, yes, ratings were up for the Valspar, I think 181% over last year. The third round coverage is the most it had been in 12 years. And Tiger Woods is just, it's a guy who had everything, was on track to be the greatest ever, and then it just all blew up in his face, largely because of his own fault. And yet we still come back to Tiger because I think, I don't want to speak for a large subset of fans, but I think that, like, we just want to see that greatness that was there before. We want to know that it can, that, like, he can do it again.
Well, he has that star power. I mean, there aren't many guys that do that and move the needle the way Tiger Woods does. And regardless of whether someone is an avid golf fan, you might get the casual people to tune in when he's in the tournament. And it's different than some of the other sports because you can make a return at the age he is at. He was dealing with that injury, of course. But it is a little bit of a window into how far the bar has lowered, where there's all this euphoria over the possibility that he maybe could win something called the Valspar.
Yeah, it's again, it's just, I was in a bar briefly yesterday, and there were a variety of sporting events on, and there was Tiger Woods in a red shirt, and it was just like, I feel like I was transported 10 years back in time, 15 years back in time, like, oh wow, your eyes are drawn to him because of, like, you know that something special is happening or could be happening and you don't want to miss out on it.
Yeah, it looked like it was the past, right, with that red shirt until he took his hat off.
Yes.
Then you're like, oh wait, it is Tiger Woods nowadays.
And then towards the end of the fourth round, he also is, like, kind of like straining to, like you can see that, like, bending over and picking up a ball is not as easy as it was 20 years ago for him. And by the way, as someone with 2 small children pushing 40, like, back problems are nothing to mess with.
Tiger Woods, one of those big names. Another one is LeBron James.
Yeah, no, SI now cannot exist unless Robin Lundberg is able to talk about LeBron James. So, Robin, with the Cavs falling to an underwhelming Lakers team, is the narrative today about the Cavs' struggles or about LeBron maybe going to the Lakers?
I think the LeBron where he's going to wind up is sort of an overarching storyline. Right now, I do believe it's about the narrative that will emerge, which is, are the new Cavs the same as the old Cavs? You know, LA has a nice young core. They've been playing well. And the Cavs, it's hard to imagine them getting to a championship level right now. I wouldn't overreact to their loss to LA. I sort of saw that one coming. They're missing half their rotation.
Sure.
They're in the midst of a long road trip. They still don't have Kevin Love back. As far as the Lakers side of things, I mean, it does look more and more appealing, but there is a caveat. In order to bring in 2 max free agents, they wouldn't also be able to keep Julius Randle, who has played at a max level since the trade deadline.
Do you think that Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, and then say they bring in Paul George and LeBron James, or if they brought in Paul George, is that enough to lure LeBron, or do you think that the Philadelphia 76ers are a better option for him?
I actually think the Lakers are maybe a better fit with the personnel they have there. But again, they would have to get rid of Randall if you want to bring in both George and James. But anytime you're adding, LeBron James, you're putting yourself right in the game.
Yeah, you are.
Richard Sherman and the Seahawks parted ways over the weekend. It wasn't surprising considering the reports and the direction Seattle seems to be heading. However, it may have been a surprise for them to see Sherman sign with the 49ers. As Sherman said, quote, "I'm vengeful that way." Will Sherman in San Francisco make an impact on who wins the NFC West?
I'm inclined to say yes, even if the fact that it's his absence in Seattle. I do think that the moves that the Rams and Niners have made them the front runners for the NFC West this offseason. But speaking as like someone who cheers for the Seattle Seahawks, it's a devastating end to an era. And as a Seahawks fan, that tip in the 2014 NFC Championship game, that was that year's Super Bowl, and not blowing the Broncos out of the water. And that is the highlight that I think of first as a Seahawks fan, as the greatest moment in Seahawks history. And for him to just switch uniforms between those two teams on the field, it is a dagger. And while an Achilles rupture is nothing it's something to take very, very seriously, and it's hard to recover from. Someone as fierce and fiercely intelligent and vengeful as Richard Sherman is somebody to be feared.
Yeah, but you made a reference to that 49ers game. Sherman at this point is probably mediocre, like he called Michael Crabtree back then. I mean, well, he's past his prime.
He could be watching. Dude, he will come after you, Rob.
No, he's a very smart dude, very engaging dude, a great career. That Seattle team maybe is undersold historically because they're compared directly with New England. And I think he can help the 49ers. He's just not the impact player he once was. He has to take on sort of that role of the aging veteran who can help a young team get to the level that they want to be at, not the guy who's going to change it by himself.
Yes. That's a totally fair point. Also in the NFL, video surfaced of Odell Beckham Jr. enjoying his offseason, and let's just say he was holding what appeared to be a cigarillo of sorts, and lines of white powder, which I'm just going to assume was confectioner's sugar, was nearby. Frankly, this isn't the sort of thing that moves my needle. I don't really mind what players do with their offseason as long as they're not harming others. But you have to wonder, with the Giants being kind of a conservative organization, how much is going to be too much for them?
Yeah, I mean, he's on thin ice, I guess, right? And it doesn't take more than blunt impact to break that thin ice when you're in Odell Beckham's situation right now. I don't think this is a big deal isolated. I actually feel a little bad for him because he clearly didn't want this to get out there. I'm not going to be the kind of hypocrite who's going to say they shouldn't test for that in the NFL and then crush him for it.
Yeah.
But he is somebody who knows he is hyper observed right now, considering his track record, considering his contract situation coming up. But I won't hesitate to point out the irony with the Giants being a team whose all-time greatest player is Lawrence Taylor, if they go nuts over some of the other things that might have appeared on camera, however briefly in that video.
Well, and the NFL employs Michael Irvin. There's the standard bearers there are maybe not what the NFL would like them to be. I'll tell you what really bothered me about that video. Did you see that pizza? That was not quality pizza, and that is something that gets my ire up very much.
The NFL has had its problems with pizza as of late. I mean, that has been in the news more than you would think when it comes to that league. That'll do it for us here today on SI Now Live. Robin Lundberg, Matt Ufford back tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, you can check out all the latest updates and videos at SI Now Live on Twitter. Maybe we'll eat some pizza on camera.
No.
Are you opposed to that?
I'm always down.
Yeah. I've had to cut pizza out of my diet. I'm trying to,
Sorry.
watch my figure